Ms. Carney, I want to thank you very much for spending the time with me today. I just got a couple of questions. I like to get your thoughts. What it means when a victim, we're talking about Ted Bundy, right? The Ted Bundy case. It's a very old case, so roughly over 50 years. What does this mean when a victim is identified decades after a case was thought, when everybody thought it was closed?
Well, it's interesting because we're chasing evil with Ted Bundy, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is a man who I think was born to be a serial killer. Unfortunately, I think it was in his DNA. And I also feel like he, most serial killers are sexually violent, and
Yeah.
it's the only way they can get sexual gratification is through violence.
Hmm.
So it's a sad story. So I don't think, Brian, that justice should have an expiration date.
Okay. Good.
And I think for the families, it's very important for them to get closure. It's very sad. And, it's like reliving another loss of a loved one. But also, I think there's a certain ability to move on or put it to rest when you know who the perpetrator was for certain and you know that they have been executed. I think that the families will always have some part in their heart that's not sure. Now, what's interesting, Brian, is that Ted Bundy confessed to murdering Laura Ann Amy many 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But you can't just take a serial killer's confession
Yeah.
because they'll confess to all kinds of stuff. It wouldn't be right for justice and for families to take their word for it.
Hmm.
But I have friends that and colleagues that have worked on cold cases.
Hmm.
One of them, which was similar to Ted Bundy, is the Golden State Killer in California,
Oh, yeah.
who they made the HBO special on called I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Hmm.
And they found him 40 years later, having murdered 13 people and raped 50 women, teenagers. And again, it was through advanced techniques in DNA. And so I feel that even DNA samples such as 23andMe, Ancestry.com are very useful because if a cousin or a second sister once removed, etc., you get a DNA match, the police, the investigators can contact that distant relative.
Hmm.
So I know a lot of people ask what you asked,
Yeah.
which is why do we care so much when this was 50 years later?
Yeah.
And I think it's because serial killers need to know that we're not going to let them go and get away with crimes. If you feel like you kill a killing spree and then you can just either ditch out like the Golden State Killer did for 40 years, I think that justice requires that we give families peace and answers. I really do. Um, I also think that we give a lot of credit to the police, the FBI, the sheriffs, because they preserve this evidence in pristine condition. Had they not preserved it properly, we couldn't test it 50 years later.
Hmm.
But so I encourage police, law enforcement worldwide, if you have unsolved cases, really carefully preserve the dress, the glove, the scarf,
Hmm.
the fingerprint, whatever you can, the lipstick on the glass, so that technology can catch up with you and we can catch these serial killers.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just curious. I didn't know that those kinds of people existed. Would you have any explanation why they do it? I mean, I don't, I can understand why they would, well, maybe one or two, but this, in the case of the Bundy, he killed a lot of girls and he preyed on young women.
You're right. And we've only found about 40 of his victims.
Hmm?
There's evidence that there's between 40 and 60 more
Yeah.
that have not been tied into him.
Hmm.
That's a lot of killing.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me on your question is some countries don't have serial killers.
Yes.
It seems to be in democratic countries like the UK and the United States and Canada. That seems to, I mean, I haven't heard of serial killers in Italy or France or China or Taiwan or Singapore or the Philippines. Now, maybe they don't report it. Maybe it's not tied to one person, but there's always the question. This is an obsession. This is an addiction. It's why any pedophile,
Mhm.
any perpetrator of sexual assault against children and girls and young women does it over and over and over because, and I hope I'm not getting too graphic for your audience, but
Yes.
here's the problem that doctors talk about, that once you get sexual pleasure from a murderous act or a pedophilic act, it kind of rewires the brain. And so you need that stimulation to feel that same pleasure. And it's very terrible. I mean, you kind of, that's why pornography is so bad. That's why AI generated pornography is so bad, because we're generating images and violence and attacks and abuse, whether they're, avatars or whatever, avatars, whether they're avatars or they're simulated or they're AI generated, we're rewiring the brain of the viewer to
Mhm.
get sexual gratification from illegal, violent, abusive, rape, child abuse, S&M, torture. It's not good.
Mhm.
And so people say, well, aren't you for free speech and for, you
Yeah.
know, I am for free speech, but I don't think that pornography necessarily has a, cultural benefit. I don't think it's got some of the prongs of the First Amendment in the United States that makes it okay to just have unlimited pornography. So I think that Ted Bundy started out and it got more and more violent, and he needed more and more violence to get sexual gratification. He needed it more because it used to work
Mhm.
on the first, but then he needed it sooner and he needed another victim and he needed more screaming and he needed more pain and he needed more secrecy. And here's the thing with Ted Bundy that's so kind of surprising.
Mhm.
He's the kind of man that when you look at him,
Mhm.
he seems like a middle class, decent, handsome, college going, person in your community that you would completely trust
Yeah.
and like. He was very charming.
Mhm. Yeah.
And most of these serial killers are charming.
Okay. So, okay, you mentioned about AI. I mean, so I'm sure you're aware of what's happening now on social media. With some people, I mean, well, they're resorting to exposing themselves in a way, or at least teasing the opposite sex or the same sex with I don't know, with what do you call this? I'm not sure how to term it, but they take videos of them to sort of seduce or to get attention. Do you think that is a problem that will invite such cases like this? Maybe not at that level, or maybe at that level, because during Ted Bundy's time, there was no technology like what we have right now. There's no AI, there's no social media. But now with social media, does this make things worse or more for anybody who resorts to such things?
Absolutely. And it's a wonderful question because if I had a daughter
Mhm.
or a young, cousin or in-law or niece, it's very dangerous because social media and adding technology, artificial intelligence, being able to simulate, being able to use an image and actually have it talk and be able to link up the voice with what you're saying, I think is priming a generation of sexual predators, rapists, abusers, and also it's priming victims. It's telling women, children, and girls that you're going to be treated this way. This is a way of ordinary treatment. This is a way that we're publicly seeing women, children, girls, and young boys too being treated. And I don't think it's good. And I really think that the AI platforms, that the social media platforms have literally gotten away with murder. They are so unregulated worldwide.
Yeah.
Maybe in some countries they're better regulated, but not in the Western world, not in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Western Europe, the Philippines. I'm not sure about Asia, But I'm just saying, network television in the United States had standards and practices, and you couldn't even swear. You couldn't name a private part. And
hmm
now you have social media and AI, which I love and I use constantly. I'm not against AI. I think it's a blessing and a
Yes.
miracle, but it needs restrictions. It needs regulation. You can't just let people run wild and do whatever they're going to do, which would be illegal in person, but legal online.
Yes.
And I think the problem is our governments, our
Yes.
legislators, our elected officials, one, tend to skew, pardon my, a little bit older.
hmm
And by older, I mean they may not have been in the generation that had technology, social media, the internet. They tend to be statesmen and women that are older, who
hmm
are less technologically capable. I don't think they understand the technology. I've seen congressional hearings in the United States where the questions were, very poor because the asker didn't understand the technology.
Yeah.
Younger people understand it. Millennials somewhat understand it, but Gen Zers are really understand it. And every generation that comes along understands it better. Those aren't our elected officials. Those aren't the people running the world.
Yeah.
And so there's no regulation because the people in power do not understand the impact that this technology could have
hmm
on a whole society and world of young women, young girls, young men, sexuality, relationships, marriage,
hmm
you name it. This is going to impact it with these kind of graphic videos that use artificial intelligence to even simulate celebrities. You
hmm
can see Taylor Swift, having, being the victim of S&M.
hmm
You can see you know, many, many famous people being their images being used in inappropriate ways. And it's not going to stop until we get better regulation, until social media is regulated, until artificial intelligence is regulated. I'm not saying shut people down. I'm not against free speech.
Yeah.
But this is the Wild West and it's a free for all. And I think it's going to grow more Ted Bundys.
Yes, that's true.
I do. And I don't know why other countries don't have this kind of problem. I don't get it. I don't get it. What do you think? Why do you think we don't see serial killers to this degree in many parts of the world? I don't see it in Africa. I don't see it in Asia. I don't see it in India. Now, maybe they exist and they don't get the publicity. I don't know. What do you think? In your country, are there serial killers?
Well, none publicly there, but there are a lot of. I mean, every day I watch the news, and there's something like this, something like that. I mean, even the kids. I don't know, but at the end of the day, when I talk to my wife, I always say, isn't that the problem of the person who's involved, or the ones, or her parents, or something like that, or whatever. It's more control. I agree with you on this that there's no regulation. Even here in the Philippines, it's worse. Every day I get the news. Somebody's got killed. Somebody got raped. Somebody got sexually assaulted. Especially when you talk about minors, that's rampant
Um,
here in the Philippines.
in the Philippines also. Now, here's the
Yeah.
thing. 1 in 3 girls
Mhm.
and 1 in 5 boys will be sexually assaulted by someone they know before the age of 18.
Mhm.
The United Nations said there's 175 million boys and 225 million girls that have been sexually assaulted, raped, or sexually abused before the age of 18, and that's reported cases, and only 2% are reported.
Yeah.
And so, I did a show, uh, and it was with a person in the Philippines that used to be a talk show host in the Philippines, and
Mhm.
it was covered by the Inquirer in the Philippines.
Uh-huh.
And she came out to me on her show as having been a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And I believe her father was a senator or a vice president, something very high up. And it was the first time in tears she came out and said she'd been sexually assaulted as a child. So I think the Philippines has their share of child sexual abuse,
Yeah.
child assault, pedophilia, rape. I don't think these crimes against women and children have an economic class, have a nationality, live in a particular part of the world. I think it is a worldwide problem. And
Yes.
it's a worldwide problem because we are not doing anything about it. Just to divert a second, yes, we found Ted Bundy 50 years later after he had committed the crime, and that's fabulous. It's too bad we didn't find him and stop him from murdering 50 other young girls and raping them and torturing them.
Yeah.
But look at the situation with Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew. With Prince Andrew, the United Kingdom just came out and said they're not going to allow the FBI to talk to Prince Andrew.
Hmm.
Right? And in the United States, only two people have been convicted, tried, arrested, and jailed for this crime. There are 2,000 victims, some of which I believe were sex trafficked from the Philippines. There are victims from the Philippines. There are victims from Eastern Europe, from the Ukraine, from the stands, Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. We're looking at worldwide exploitation of women, children, and girls. And Ted Bundy went as far as murdering them, but he didn't have the protection of being a president, of being a first lady, of being a prime minister, of being a owner of a modeling agency, of being the 1% class of billionaires that participated in the sex trafficking of 1,500 to 2,000 children.
Yeah. You actually mentioned Jeffrey Epstein. I was going to ask you about that. I mean,
I'm sorry, I just had to do it because
yeah,
we're focused on Ted Bundy,
yeah,
but I'm saying that Jeffrey Epstein was a form of Ted
yeah,
Bundy.
yeah, yeah.
He was another um, like example of the exploitation of children,
Hmm.
of girls, of women, trafficked, tortured, murdered, with no accountability,
Hmm.
but just a massive cover up. Worldwide, a massive cover up. Because information coming out from the Department of Justice Epstein file releases shows that there was a governor from New Mexico included.
Hmm.
There was a senator. There was some members of the Trump cabinet. There was prime ministers from other countries. There was royalty. There were professors. I mean, there were bankers. We're looking at every major industry in the world had some participation in the Epstein sex trafficking case.
Yeah. Well, I've been writing about that too. So
Really?
yeah,
If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them if you ever need it.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much for that. But okay, now until now, I mean DNA technology. Maybe I watched it over television, maybe the CSI series. I mean, obviously, it has changed the way that cases like these are being handled. Do you think that aside from Bundy, I mean, aside from him and possibly identifying other of his victims, do you think this will also expose other serial killers of cases that have not been solved to this day?
That's a good question. I do think it's going to expose other serial killers because what's happening is police departments are looking at their cold cases because when you unlock one cold case through DNA, you open the door for many.
Yeah.
I certainly think that many of the Bundy victims will find the correlation, but I also think it's going to solve cold cases. As I said, it already solved the cold case of the Golden State Killer in California, was through DNA and advanced techniques. So I give law enforcement the inspiration to know that their hard work and their investigation and their preservation of evidence will someday pay off. I think between technology, DNA, video, street cams. It's a lot harder to be a serial killer now. There's cameras, doorbell cameras.
Mm-hmm.
There's cameras on the streets. There's cameras in people's homes. There's cameras in alleyways. There's cameras in bars. There's cameras everywhere in courthouses. It's a lot harder to hide with the magnitude of technology and cameras that are watching you. I think more of the abuse is going to happen online.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I would agree
Because
with you on that.
yeah, there's more privacy.
Yes.
You're in your own home.
Yeah.
And if you're technologically smart,
Hmm.
you can erase your data tracing. You can, if you know technology, you can wipe out identity of who you are. I mean, and I think we're moving toward a culture. For example, in the United States and worldwide,
Hmm.
there is advertisement of a rape academy for young males online, and they said there were 65,000 users on how to rape, drug, and abuse your loved ones, your wife, your children, girlfriends, and not get caught. It's actually teaching young men the ins and outs of sexual assault.
Hmm.
CNN did an investigative piece on it.
Uh-huh.
And so while technology is going to solve a lot of cases, it's going to generate a lot more, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because they can work around it. I mean, they can. I mean, for those who are wise, they could use this to turn things around easily. I mean, that's another flip side on this technology part.
And you're right, they are getting away with it. They
Yeah.
are using it easily. I don't think there's enough law enforcement, police departments, FBI's, investigative units to handle the volume of people using their computer, using AI, using social media, using the internet
Hmm.
to assault, stalk, bully, abuse, groom, entrap, trick, young women, girls, children, men. I mean, if I was a parent today, I'd be tearing my hair out. I mean, how do you keep your children safe? Do you hover over them every time they're using a device? And how do you do that? They have computers in school, their
Yeah.
friends have cell phones. I mean, you see babies in strollers on iPads.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you put the genie back in the bottle for some
Hmm.
safety?
Yes. That's a big question. Thankfully, my kids are not like that. They're more
How
conservative.
how old are your children?
I have one that's already around 30, and another one is turning 20.
Oh, good. All right. So, I mean, the 20-year-olds still have to be careful.
Yes.
The 30-year-old's wiser and a little bit smarter, hopefully. But even with a 20-year-old, I mean, I don't mean to like cover every avenue of sexual assault that's ever been committed, but
Hmm.
college sexual assault is a huge problem.
Hmm.
The date rape drugs are so bad in bars in the United
Oh yeah.
States that they have passed a law in California that if you are a bar of a certain size, you need a date rape testing kit
Hmm.
available to your patrons in the bar
Okay.
so that you can test your drink to
Hmm.
make sure you haven't had someone give you a date rape drug.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's not even fun anymore.
Yes.
You go to a bar, you go to have fun, you dance, you want to meet people. Who wants to drug test your drink?
Yes, that's true.
But the truth is, Brian, who wants to get raped, knocked out? I've had clients who were on college campuses and at a fraternity party and given a date rape drug, didn't remember being, group raped, and
Hmm.
only found out when the boys were running the video on YouTube. She didn't even remember.
Wow.
It was devastating.
Yeah, that's the generation now that I don't understand why they. I don't know. That's what they call fun. They.
I know I'm not, what is that about? I mean, I don't mean to sound like a, senior citizen, but I
Yeah.
don't understand why um there's so much violence with sexuality now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much, I don't know if it's that women are becoming more powerful and more equal to men,
Mm.
and men are angry and threatened by it, or men are not thriving to the same expectation that they thought they were, especially white men. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about sort of in the United States, white men of privilege are used to being able to rule everything. And there's been more competition, I think, from women.
Mhm.
And I think that women in school work harder, study harder. We have to prove ourselves. We have to be better and we have to
Yeah.
work harder and be smarter. And I think that some of the men that we're expecting to thrive are being left behind. I have to believe that there are still really good, loving, caring, solid men, and that we're looking at a percentage that, although high, about 25%, is not everybody. And 75% of men are decent
Yeah.
and caring and loving, and, we love them and depend on them, and, they're huge parts of our lives, and we honor them and respect them. But I think it's going to be up to men
Hmm.
to take control over younger men or their colleagues that they see doing this. I think the burden's been placed on women victims to do it, but I don't understand why good men aren't doing more to stop not good men. Even in the office, Brian, you'll see sexual harassment in the office, you'll see
Yeah.
bullying.
Hmm.
I have a friend of mine who worked at a big office and he said he saw it. He didn't know what to do. And he said he didn't want to have jeopardize his position there
Hmm.
and he didn't want to make waves. And I think if more men stood up and said, this isn't okay, stop, I think we'd be in a better place. What do you think? Do you think men can help stop this?
Yeah, definitely they can. I mean, if you're in the right mindset, you would.
Right. You're right. Because, like, when I go somewhere and I see, like, I was at Costco here. I don't know if you have Costco in the Philippines or not, but
Uh,
it's a big superstore,
yeah.
discount store that has everything. And I saw a woman physically abuse her two sons in her shopping cart.
Oh.
And there were at least 15 patrons there that saw it. Everyone stood and watched, but nobody did anything. No one did anything until I stepped in and said, you gotta stop. I'm gonna call the police. This is child abuse. You
Yeah.
gotta stop. And she said, nobody needs some mean bitch like you. Mind your own business. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't your business. And I said to the whole group, this is all of our business.
Hmm.
Now, you need a timeout. You need to go get a cup of coffee. We'll watch your children. You need to chill out.
Yeah.
And she still yelled and screamed, but she did walk away. I took the kids with a couple people and just, bought them a, soda, whatever. And the child said to me, he was only about 7,
Hmm.
you're the first person to ever talk to my mother like that. You're the first one that ever did anything.
Well,
It made me
sometimes,
feel bad.
yeah. Well, sometimes you have to when it's too extreme and too and no one wants to do. You really have to step in sometimes.
It made me feel bad though that here are these two beautiful children getting smacked around and slapped. I mean, I don't mean just like a timeout or don't do this anymore. I mean like slapped, hit, screamed at, and no one did anything
Hmm.
right in front of them.
Yeah.
So do we have any wonder why we're creating Ted Bundys?
Yeah. It starts from that. That's an example.
Right, we all need to help. We all need to feel like this is our responsibility. If we all got together and said we're not going to put up with this, mothers believe their children, people stop, when they see predators. If a child says, uncle, somebody's doing something, cousin, somebody's doing something, I'm afraid of my big brother, whatever the story is, if we believe and take action, we can stop the cycle. And
That's.
I don't even know what happened to Ted Bundy. What I read about him, he was not sexually or physically abused.
Hmm.
Apparently, his parents were middle class, decent people. So, him, I think, was genetic.
Okay.
I think it was just DNA. He was a born serial killer
Yeah.
because he has no abuse excuse.
Yeah. And I don't know. He was good looking at the same time, but
He
he
was
used it.
very handsome.
Yeah. He used
I
it
mean,
in a different way.
I would have talked to him in the 70s.
Hmm.
He was smiley and charming and had, blue eyes and curly hair and a grin and very friendly. I'm just lucky I didn't encounter him because I would have talked to him if he was friendly and nice. I'm friendly and nice. I would have said hello, how are? I mean, it's crazy, Brian.
Yeah, it is. It was. That's why I was shocked when I was doing the research and looking about it. How could a guy like this would do this?
I know. I know, and I'm not sure we know the root of evil.
Hmm. But
I'm
what
not
also
sure.
what's puzzling me is he admitted to killing his victims, but why didn't he say where they were?
And some of the victims he admitted to killing,
Hmm.
they didn't find it right. And
Yes,
some of
yes,
the victims he said he killed, he did.
yeah.
I'm not sure, other than control
Hmm.
and power and wanting his possessions, his women victims to be untouched by authorities. Like those were sort of prizes or his ownership. I think it was about power and control because why wouldn't he say where the bodies were?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't he allow families to bury them properly?
yes.
To be able to put that to peace. It seemed cruel,
Mhm.
but they couldn't do more to him than execute him.
Yeah.
Like there's not any more leverage. What do we say? We're going to kill him twice?
Hmm.
But you're right. I do think that it would have been the right thing to do to give families a chance.
Closure.
Yes, and to properly grieve and bury in a family gravesite, in a place that was special to them, something for closure. To not do that was very cruel, and it left a lot of pieces to the puzzle. If we had found the bodies, we would have had even more DNA, more information. We would have known a lot more.
True, true. Okay, I got a lot of information for you. I don't know how many articles I can write with this, but I really appreciate the time. I mean, it gives me a better understanding of the Ted Bundy case and a lot of other, because that's my beat in international business time. So I'm really very very appreciative of this interview. At least I can write an original piece on my end.
Thank you so much for having me and
Yeah.
giving me a chance to voice my opinion
Mhm.
and my legal analysis. Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully in the future we can do this again, maybe with
I'm
other
happy to do
cases.
it, Brian. Very
Yeah.
happy to help you.
All right. I won't keep you long.
All right,
Thank,
thank you
I,
so
thank you
much.
so much, and have a nice, good day ahead, and take
You
care.
too.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.